My brother died when I was 7 years old. He was 13. He drowned in the lake down the street from our house. The funeral was small. Mom wore black and didn't speak for 3 weeks afterward. Dad started working double shifts, coming home after I was asleep, gone before I woke up. We became strangers living in the same house, orbiting around the empty space where Tyler used to be. His room became untouchable. The door stayed shut for 11 years, like a tomb. Sometimes I'd catch Mom standing outside it, her hand hovering over the doorknob, never quite making contact. Dad would find her there and lead her away without a word. On quiet nights, I swear I could hear her whispering Tyler's name through the thin walls, like a prayer that never got answered. But I went in. Not often, but enough. Late at night, when the grief felt too heavy, I'd slip inside and sit on his bed, breathing in the fading scent of his cologne and the mustiness of time. The room was exactly as he'd left it. Clothes draped over his chair, homework scattered on his desk, a half-finished model airplane on his dresser. Sometimes I'd find things moved slightly from where I remembered them, but I always told myself it was just my memory playing tricks. I never disturbed anything, until today. This morning, while packing for college, I decided I wanted something of his to take with me. A hoodie, maybe, or one of his books. Something tangible to hold on to when the homesickness hit. I was digging through his closet when I found them, hidden behind a pile of old sneakers wrapped in a towel like contraband. 3 DVDs. No labels, just numbers scratched into the surface with a pen. 1, 2, 3. The scratches looked fresh, as if someone had just carved them yesterday. My hands trembled as I held them. Tyler had never owned a camera. None of us had. Dad always said photos were for people who couldn't remember things right. But as I held the discs up to the light, I noticed something that made my stomach clench. Tiny water droplets trapped inside the cases, as if they'd been submerged. The only DVD player left in the house was hooked up to Tyler's old TV. Everything else had gone digital years ago. For a long moment, I just stared at the discs, weighing them in my palms like they might explode. The water droplets inside the cases caught the light, swirling like tiny storms. I should have left them alone. Should have thrown them away, burned them, anything but what I did next. Instead, I slid the first disc into the player and pressed play. Static filled the screen, then slowly cleared to reveal something that made my stomach drop. It was our house, but wrong. Fundamentally, impossibly wrong. The living room stretched too wide, the walls breathing with a subtle rhythm like sleeping lungs. The furniture was ours, but arranged in ways that hurt to look at. The couch facing the wrong wall, the coffee table floating inches off the ground, chairs stacked in impossible towers that defied gravity. And there were voices. But they were coming from beneath the floorboards, muffled and distant like people trapped underground. Mom's laughter, crystal clear but hollow, echoing from somewhere just off camera. Dad's voice calling for dinner, but the words were backwards, the syllables wrong. The clink of silverware against plates, but the rhythm was too fast, too frantic, like someone eating in desperation. Then I heard it. Tyler's laugh. That specific musical sound that I'd mourned for 11 years. But it was wrong too. Too high, lasting too long, breaking into something that sounded more like screaming. It filled the room, filled my chest, and instead of comfort, I felt something cold settle in my bones. The voices continued. Mom was saying something about dinner being ready, but her words overlapped themselves, creating an echo that made no sense. I could hear footsteps, but they were coming from above and below simultaneously, like someone walking on the ceiling and in the basement at the same time. The camera showed only empty rooms with impossible dimensions, walls that curved when they should have been straight, doorways that led to rooms that didn't exist in our house. Then Tyler laughed again, closer this time, but now it sounded wet, like he was laughing underwater. That's when the other voice spoke. Low, wet, cutting through the family sounds like fingernails on glass. You haven't noticed yet. The voice didn't belong to any of us. It was speaking directly into the microphone, close enough that I could hear every wet click of its tongue, the sound of saliva thick in its throat. But worse than that, it sounded like Tyler's voice, but aged. Like Tyler might sound now, at 24, if he had lived. If he had grown up underwater. I hit pause, my finger stabbing at the remote so hard the battery cover popped off. The screen froze on a shot of our kitchen, but the kitchen was all wrong. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat, the sink faucet dripped upward, and something dark moved behind the refrigerator, just at the edge of the frame. I ejected the disc with shaking hands, but it was warm to the touch, almost hot. The surface was no longer perfect. Now I could see fingerprints pressed into it, small handprints that looked like a child's. Tyler's prints, maybe, from when he was 7, from the day he died. My parents were downstairs watching the news. I could hear the familiar drone of the evening broadcast, the sound of Mom making tea. Normal sounds, safe sounds. But underneath it all, I swear I could hear splashing, like someone swimming in our living room. I put in disc number 2 and immediately knew I'd made a mistake. This time the video opened on Tyler's bedroom, this room where I was sitting. But it was wrong, so fundamentally wrong that my brain refused to process it at first. The walls were covered in lake water, streaming down like rain, pooling on the floor in dark puddles. His model airplane hung from the ceiling like a mobile, spinning slowly, dripping. His clothes were soaked, draped over the chair like he'd just pulled them from the lake. The camera moved through the room like someone giving a tour, but the movements were too fluid, too graceful, like it was floating. It panned across his waterlogged desk, lingered on books with pages fused together by moisture, zoomed in on his alarm clock, which was running backwards. But there were other differences. Pictures on his wall showed scenes I didn't remember. Tyler at places we'd never been, with people I'd never seen. In one, he was standing waist-deep in dark water, smiling, but his eyes were completely black. Tyler's voice came through the speakers, crystal clear but wrong. Remember when we built that fort in the woods? I did remember. We'd spent an entire summer working on it, just the two of us, using stolen plywood and bent nails. It had been our secret place. But Tyler had never finished it. He died 3 days before we planned to add the roof. I finished it, his voice continued, but now it sounded different. Hollow, like it was coming from the bottom of the lake. I finished it down here. Come see. The camera began to shake violently. The image quality degraded, colors bleeding into each other like watercolors in rain, but I could still make out shapes moving in the corners of the frame. Dark figures that seemed to turn and look at me directly through the screen. And in the mirror above his dresser, I could see myself sitting there watching. But I wasn't alone. There was something behind me, something tall and dripping, leaning over my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the screen, the figures were gone, but water was seeping from the edges of the television, forming dark stains on the carpet that spread like blood. Then that other voice returned, much closer now, breathing directly into my ear even though I was alone. You noticed. I ripped the DVD out so fast I nearly broke the player. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, and sweat had broken out across my forehead despite the chill that had settled in the room like fog. But I could still hear something, a sound that didn't belong. Footsteps in the hallway outside Tyler's room. Slow, deliberate steps that stopped right outside his door. But they were wrong somehow. Too heavy, like someone walking in waterlogged boots. I could hear water dripping with each step, pooling under the door. I held my breath, straining to listen. The footsteps resumed, but now I could hear breathing too. Wet, labored breathing like someone trying to breathe through water. They moved past the door, down the hall toward my room, leaving a trail of lake water in their wake. I knew I should check. I knew I should open the door and prove to myself that it was just Mom or Dad, maybe coming to check on me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The footsteps were too heavy, too wet. And underneath the sound of breathing, I could hear something else. A quiet humming. Tyler used to hum that exact tune when he was nervous. Instead, I grabbed the third disc with trembling fingers. The moment it began to play, every light in the room went out. The only illumination came from the TV screen, which now showed our backyard at night. But this wasn't filmed from ground level. The camera was positioned underwater, looking up through the lake toward our house. Everything was distorted by the water, wavering and dreamlike, but I could make out our back porch, our windows, all glowing with warm yellow light. And there was someone standing at the water's edge above. The figure was silhouetted against the moon, but the stance was achingly familiar. The slight slouch, hands in pockets, the way the head tilted when thinking. Tyler had stood exactly like that 1,000 times. But as I watched, the figure began to change. Its limbs stretched, elongating like taffy. Its head lolled at an angle that should have broken its neck. The camera began to rise through the water, bubbles streaming past the lens. As it breached the surface, I could hear breathing. Not the camera operator's breathing, but something else. Something that sounded wet and desperate, like someone trying to breathe and drown at the same time. The figure at the lake hadn't moved, but now I could see it more clearly. It wore Tyler's clothes, his favorite blue hoodie, his torn jeans. But the fabric clung to its body like it was soaked through, water dripping in steady streams. Its arms hung too long, nearly reaching its knees. Its fingers were webbed. "I've been waiting," Tyler's voice said, but the sound was coming from everywhere at once. The speakers, the walls, inside my own head. "I've been waiting so long." The camera moved closer, and I could see that the thing wearing Tyler's face wasn't Tyler at all. Its skin was pale and bloated, like something that had been underwater too long. Its eyes were solid black, reflecting nothing. When it smiled, I could see that its teeth had grown sharp, pointed like a shark's. But the worst part was that it was looking directly at the camera, looking directly at me. "You found my videos," it said, and its voice was Tyler's voice, but wrong, like someone doing a bad impression. "You found my invitation." That's when I realized someone was standing behind me in the room. I could feel them there, could sense their presence like ice water poured down my spine. The floorboards creaked under their weight. Water dripped onto my shoulder, soaking through my shirt. In the TV's reflection, I saw a dark shape looming over me. But when I spun around, the room was empty except for the smell. The thick, choking smell of lake water and rotting fish. When I turned back to the screen, the thing that looked like Tyler was gone. The camera panned across the empty shoreline, then slowly began to sink back into the water. As it descended, I could see bones scattered on the lake bottom. Small bones, child-sized bones, arranged in careful patterns like someone had been playing with them. The camera sank deeper, and I could see more things in the murky depths. Other children, floating just above the bottom, their eyes open and staring, their mouths moving like they were trying to speak. Some of them looked familiar. Kids who had gone missing over the years. Kids whose pictures had been on milk cartons and missing person flyers. Then the camera tilted up toward Tyler's bedroom window, zooming in with impossible clarity, where I was sitting, watching. But in the reflection on the screen, I wasn't alone. The room was crowded with figures, all of them dripping wet, all of them wearing Tyler's face, but wrong, distorted, like reflections in funhouse mirrors. They were reaching toward me with webbed fingers, mouths open in silent screams. The breathing sound grew louder, more desperate. Water began to pour from the TV screen, not just seeping but gushing, flooding Tyler's room. The smell of rot and decay filled the air, making me gag. That's when the voice spoke one final time, but now it was coming from right behind me, from inside the room, from inside my own head. Come to the lake. Come home. I bolted. I tore the disc from the player and ran, but my feet splashed through ankle-deep water that shouldn't have been there. Tyler's door slammed shut behind me with a sound like thunder, and I could hear scratching from inside like fingernails on wood, like someone trying to claw their way out. The hallway was flooded. Dark water rushed from under every door, carrying with it the smell of decay and things that had been dead too long. I could hear voices coming from behind each door I passed. Mom crying Tyler's name over and over, Dad screaming for help, and underneath it all, Tyler's laughter, getting louder and more hysterical. By the time I reached my room, the water was up to my knees. I slammed the door and pressed my back against it, but I could still hear them, the footsteps in the hallway getting closer. The whispered conversations in a voice I'd missed for 11 years but now wished I'd never heard again. Now I'm sitting on my bed, writing this while water seeps under my door. The smell is getting stronger. My computer screen flickers every few seconds, and I swear I can see faces in the static. Tyler's face, over and over, each one more distorted than the last. And outside my window, I can see the lake. It's glowing in the moonlight, but the glow is wrong, too bright, too green. The water is moving, forming shapes, spelling out words I don't want to read. The footsteps have stopped outside my door. Someone is breathing on the other side, heavy and wet. Water is pouring under the door now, and floating in it are things I don't want to look at. DVDs with no labels, child-sized bones, photographs of Tyler that show him in places he never went, doing things he never did. There's knocking now. Soft at first, then harder. A voice calling my name. But it's not Tyler's voice anymore. It's something pretending to be Tyler. Something that learned his voice from the bottom of the lake. The water in my room climbs higher, cold against my waist. My computer screen flickers, static writhing across it, and in the noise I see Tyler's face. Not one, but dozens, all dripping, all grinning, each one wrong in a different way. Outside the window, the lake glows an unnatural green, its surface rippling into letters that nearly spell my name. The knocking grows violent, rattling the door against my spine. Then it stops. Silence. Heavy. Wet. The doorknob turns. His breathing seeps through the crack, thick, drowning breaths, as if every inhale drags water into his lungs. The floor tilts beneath me like the house itself is sinking. My desk lamp gutters out. On the black glass of the monitor, my reflection stares back, but I'm already submerged, eyes black, smile too wide. The door bursts open, and the lake comes in.